People here, they've kind of been ahead of the curve with that, where they've really cared about the origin of their products for a really long time.
Anything that brings people in this industry together for one cause.
Well, it's the heart of collaboration, right? That's the best part about it.
When you get to collaborate with different people on different systems, you just add more tools into your tool belt.
The things that sparked my passion in beer were the breweries that I loved on the island that were doing amazing things. I was drinking beer by these breweries and loving it and being like, I want to make this. I want to make something like this. It's inspiring me.
It's been really cool to watch the evolution and the way that everyone's kind of helping each other out.
Being like, oh, do you want to be a part of something we're doing together with all these breweries? Like, yes, I do. Of course I want to be a part of that.
This is how we both start and end the meeting. Gonna try and explain to everybody what exactly this whole PodPack thing is, what it's about and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish.
Certainly think this project kind of moving beyond just being about beer. The fact that suppliers are helping out to give better rates so that we can contribute as much to the Pacific Salmon Foundation as possible is fantastic. This is a community effort. This is everyone working together to make sure that we're doing the best we can.
Jake just arrived. Jake is my co-host for our road trip. So we'll be hitting the road this week. We're gonna go talk to the breweries that we're collaborating with, as well as some people involved in Salmon Hatchery, and get a perspective on what we're trying to do. About to kick off our road trip. I'm here with Jake Clark, who's my co-host on this journey.
Super excited to explore this beautiful corner of the world that we live in and drink some great beer.
Our first stop was Il Sauvage Brewing, Victoria's newest brewery with a strong focus on sour ales.
It took us a while to get here because we didn't know we'd find a warehouse space in Victoria proper. We got really lucky. Ian drove by one day as they were putting up the for lease sign on this space and pulled a Yui, like literally. Yeah.
I'll take it.
And he said, you got to get down here, and I rushed down here, looked at it, and we put in an offer to lease it the next day. We don't do a wide range of distribution at the moment. We just keep it fairly local. Most people just get our beer here in our own lounge. We're focused on, not exclusively, but mostly sour beers, and also using a lot of alternative yeast cultures in our beers.
How many yeast strains are you balancing at once? Juggling?
We are balancing quite a few.
Over there.
Well, one of them is a cheater blend. It's all the Bretts, and there's 12 Britannia Ice strains in that blend.
All in one.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that we like about our brewery is that we're at a smaller scale, we can grow up yeast.
The best thing I find about sour beer is that it's such a great transition beer for people, especially who are white wine drinkers. It's got this same acidic structure to it. It's got similar characteristics, and they just pair so well with food, which is a great way of drawing people into the beer world and challenging them to try different styles.
What we're gonna be doing is a dry hop sour.
Yeah. So the dry hop sour, the cool thing about that beer is that you don't need the hops up front, you let it sour, and then the hops actually can help to arrest any further souring development. So you can use the hops as a way to not pasteurize it, but at least stop the lacto from doing anything else.
What about the project made you guys want to come on to this?
First of all, collaborative brews are something we're interested in and like the idea of. Secondly, if it's for a good cause, then it's a no-brainer, and I think Ian and I, we all have young families, and we would love to see more brewing events that not just the community of beer, but the community more as a whole and slightly outside that. So it's right in line with where we see Il Sauvage being part of that. Yeah, as our name implies, we're a fan of the outdoors and our natural surrounds here on Vancouver Island. At the end of the day, we're open now. We get to make the beer we want to make. As brewers/owners, it's an awesome spot to be in.
We drove 2.5 hours north of Victoria, half of which was along a dusty dirt road up to Nidinat River Hatchery to connect with Rob Brewer, who manages the facility.
We're here at Nitnat River Hatchery.
This is where it all begins. This is where the adults are collected, the eggs are harvested, and the fry are raised.
Back in the day, 1980, they set this place up for all the salmon enhancement program, and they looked at Nitnat River, and it had a really high production of chum salmon. Because of logging and impacts on the ability of the river to produce the fish, set up the hatchery initially to basically produce about 30 million chum salmon per year, and then we tied in the Chinook and some coho as well. They come back to the same geographic area, then they find the river, and then they find the smell, and then they find the tributary of that river. And this place has its own smell, it has its own coho, it has its own fish food, you know, it has its own fungus and other bouquet of different organic sort of material that they know it's home. Our Chinook, our brood stock we call them, we get them from the river. Basically, we get about 90% survival, from egg to smolt. You know, 1%, 2 or 3% return. But you've got 5,000 for every female that you've taken, right? So that 1% still contributes. There's some right there.
Yeah.
I'll rip one off for you. It's a licorice fern that grows up in the moss on all these maple trees.
Oh, wow.
And, and if you're really hungry, you could eat this. And it does taste good. It just...
That's so cool. Tastes like licorice.
So this is just a series of fishways or a fish ladder. Fish basically jump 1 foot at a time, and they all are attracted back into the hatchery, and they'll come into here and jump one foot at a time all the way back into the hatchery. You know, on a good year, we'd get 50,000 adults coming back. You know, we might get 5 or 10,000 Chinook, 50,000 chum, 10,000 coho.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that's the little Nitnat there, and this is the big Nitnat. They join up and they go about 8 kilometers down the river, and that goes into Nitnat Lake, which is a Nitnat inlet. It's the saltwater lake.
You guys ever go floating down this river?
Yeah, we got stand-up boards, we got canoes, we got jet boats. So I'll take you in there and we'll show you the tagging. You can see how they're clipping the fin off the fish, and then they're putting a coated wire tag 1 millimeter long into the nose of the fish. And they're doing about 25,000 of those every day. So we're doing 100,000 of those tags this week. We do 40 million eggs right here, about 1 million per box. And at the end of the day here, we take 10 ton of eggs and we let go about 50 ton of fry. They are predators, right? So in the hatchery environment, it's pretty mundane and boring. And so we'll just spice that up a bit, especially just before release, a couple of weeks before release. And we'll introduce them to some krill, some plankton, some frozen stuff so that they know what our natural food looks like. And then we will, acclimate them, get their temperatures pretty close to what the ocean temperature would be, and so that there's an easy transition for them to go from fresh to salt water. Yeah.
Right. So this is all fresh water?
This is all fresh water. It's all pumped from the river right now, and or from different groundwater wells. And this section here, there's about 500,000 Chinook, and then the one behind it is another 500,000. And we've got 4 different types of Chinook that we're raising here, and we do some experimentation on the different size of release and different conditions that we might expose the fish to. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the Salmon Enhancement Program, have been producing these fish to augment the production of fish for commercial and sport fisheries, and also for the whales and the sea lions and all other places. But recently, because of the decreasing Chinook returns, there's been some extra effort going into producing more specifically for the killer whales.
You know, there's a lot of questions, a lot of misconceptions between hatcheries and fish farms.
Fish farms would raise the fish right up into an adult stage, and then they would harvest them and they would provide them for food. Ours are raised spawn from the wild fish, and then they're released back, reintroduced back into the wild so that they're basically wild fish. So there's about 25,000 Chinook in each one of these. This is a bit of an oxygenation system here. We just used an airlift technology just to lift the water and also to oxygenate it. But the new water coming in is either right from the river or through our aeration tower, and the aeration tower is for the groundwater. All our well water has to be aerated, otherwise it doesn't have enough oxygen in it. If we don't aerate it, we have too much nitrogen gas in it. They might get gas bubble disease like the bends, like a diver would. Our fish would get it, so that's why we aerate the groundwater. 100 feet down is a groundwater pump. Pump it up through a pipeline right up through here. It percolates through. And this is our head tank, basically, and from here water gets pushed through every other container.
This is one of the coolest buildings I've ever seen.
We're releasing about 4 million Chinook from Nitnat. From Nitnat, something we take every year. 500,000 of those go to Souk, and 3.5 million get released from Nitnat. I guess it's safe to say that, you know, what we've learned is how robust the fish are, how resilient they are. If you're given half the chance and keep the habitat there and you stop from harvesting them, that they'll come back on their own and they'll reproduce, and a more resilient fish will come out of it as well, more robust and more integrated into the whole picture, right? And so I will say, though, is that it's not just the lack of Chinook that's the problem. It's the lack of all the other ecosystem parts that come, that are the interconnectedness of the food webs and the predators and the whole thing. So that's all being affected as well by various fisheries or whatever it is. So I guess that would be my thing, is to make sure that we look at the whole picture, and then we make decisions, good decisions on what's the most appropriate way to...
From a holistic perspective.
Yeah, so be more holistic in our approach, and making sure we do take care of the harvest.
We connected with Brian, who is the general manager at White Sails Brewing, a family-run brewery in Nanaimo.
It's a super small brew space, so what we tend to focus on, we're hyper-local when we kind of build out what we try and do as a brand. So we grew up in Nanaimo, our owners own other businesses in Nanaimo, so we try and celebrate as much of this town as we possibly can in what we do as a brand. We don't have a massive scale to put out a ton of beer throughout all of BC, throughout the province, but we do tend to focus...
You're making beer for people in Nanaimo.
Exactly. We tend to focus right where we were born, where we were raised.
People coming through your front door,
100%.
hanging out in your tap room, enjoying your space, enjoying your hospitality, and drinking your beer.
Yeah.
Awesome. I noticed out in your tap room space, there's a ton of people playing board games. Is that a regular thing that happens in here?
Yeah. Pretty sure we have a knitting club in here too right now. But yeah, it's a community space, right? So we have a 140-seat tap room. We're super lucky to have a bunch of people that can come in, celebrate what we're super stoked about, which is our beer and our brewing processes and our tap room, and then they can kind of reflect that in what they're really interested in too. So it could be the knitting club that comes in on Tuesday nights. We've got Lego groups that come in here, Super Smash Brothers, tourney groups. And
So this is very much a space that you are trying to empower the locals to make it their own space.
Absolutely, yeah.
Treat it like their living room, come in, hang out, be
100%.
comfortable.
Yeah.
So what about this particular project, this pod pack collaboration with VI Brewing, really excited you that you guys want to be part of this?
yeah, well, it's super exciting, kind of being definitely on the fundraising side of thing with the Pacific Salmon Foundation. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The pod pack specifically, like the whole, the branding and the design and the build out of it is hits close to home here in Nanaimo.
We're super excited to be doing a double IPA with you guys. Like, we kind of have an interesting set of beers on this pack, and I think it shows how much the island's grown in terms of its palates as well, because there's like a double IPA, a hazy, session IPA, and 2 sours in this mix, which, like, if you said that even 2 years ago, people would be like, you're insane to try and put a mix pack out like that. But to be able to, you know, work with you guys and also like bring different stuff to the table and be able to meld those two worlds and see what we can come up with and get out of our comfort zones.
Well, that's at the heart of collaboration, right? That's the best part about it, is you get all this different perspective shift and you get the ability to play, which is the best for us. Is amazing.
It's been really cool to watch the evolution and the way that everyone's kind of helping each other out, and that's what, at the end of the day, people don't believe this about beer. People can't believe that this is actually the way that we operate, that we are this incredibly collaborative community who wants to help each other, who wants to give each other a hand, who don't look at each other as competition. We look at each other as like buddies that we get to hang out with and make cool things happen with. And it's a really interesting culture that is continuing to grow on the island.
I feel like we should do like a team effort.
Right? It's like, craft beer!
This iconic island stop along the Alberni Highway is home to a herd of goats that keep the grass roof trimmed and is a perfect spot to buy some fantastic baking.
Gonna go check out the Coombs Country Market. Can you imagine actually wearing that thing?
This apparently is a Coombs take on a Nanaimo bar that we're
Billy
about
Gruff
to take
bar.
down. A Billy Gruff bar.
Billy Gruff bar.
Because everything in Coombs is goat related.
Never had one either.
Cheers.
Cheers. Pretty delicious.
It's like a Rice Krispie peanut butter Nanaimo bar.
But like, yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah.
We're outside of Coombs Country Candy Store, and we hear there's a cool spot across the road here called Hole in the Wall. We're gonna go check it out. It was like a pipe for water runoff, and it was like built around apparently with wood and stuff, and it just deteriorated over time. We're here in Port Alberni at Twin City Brewing with Aaron, who is both the owner and brewer of this wonderful establishment. You're born and raised here, right?
Yeah,
This is home for you?
I grew up, I knew firsthand that there was nothing like this, nothing that kind of brought the community together in one place for more than just like to get beers in them and get them out the door. Like there needed to be a place that was kind of a social hub that promoted like, you know, sitting with people you wouldn't know, striking up conversation with people you wouldn't know, really like valuing good beer, good food. Something that I always said when we were starting out, you know, this could have been a coffee shop, could have been like a diner, could have been like a restaurant. There's a lot of things that could have kind of filled the need that Port Alberni had, but I think it was my own selfishness that it was like, it's going to be a brewery. Yeah. We needed quality to match what we were doing, or else it would feel like it was not balanced. So if we're putting so much effort into what we're making, you know, on the brewery side of things, we needed to match that with the food. So one of our most popular pizzas is called The Worst Place to Live. A couple years back, Port Alberni was actually ranked worst place to live in Canada by like Money Sense magazine. But the funny thing is everyone here was like, that's a mistake, right? Like it, on paper, when you look at some of the things and reasons why, I guess to that person it made sense to rank it that way. But when you live here and you have access to the lake and the mountains and the rivers and like it's such like a microcosm of what BC is, and it's so beautiful that, you know, a lot of people just made fun of that. Like they don't know, they've never been here, and so it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference. Like, yeah, it's the worst place to live. Isn't this horrible how beautiful it is?
Popular pizza.
Yeah.
On the sour that we do, the Bramble Sour, for the pod pack is we're both kind of stepping out on a limb and trying a different system. We're doing a kettle sour on ours, and you know, we've never done a kettle sour at Vancouver Island Brewing, and it sounds like you haven't really done a kettle sour either. You're doing a lacto pitch. We're going to step out and see, you know, and learn some things together on that project. I think it's going to go really well. Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's very cool to get a different experience. Like we're so in our own little bubble kind of in Port Alberni that we want to be exposed to what else is going on in the industry. The things that sparked my passion in beer were like the breweries that I loved on the island that were doing amazing things, and like any chance I get to like I get to do something with that brewery, that's amazing. Like I'm totally like a beer geek. I really think that all the people involved in this project at one point were not involved in breweries and were like drinking Vancouver Island beer.
The community is a through line in the conversation. Every single time we're talking to someone, their main goal is about being a communal space and doing something for the community.
I travel all over the world, and when I'm traveling, the first thing I do when I get to a new city is find the local brewery, sit down at the wood, and start talking to the beer tenders and ask them, where do I need to go? What do I need to see? Where do I need to eat? What are the cool things here? And without fail, it doesn't matter where in the world I go, I end up with a group of friends. We're going to stay somewhere in town. Where would you recommend that we stay?
I would say stay on the tugboat, swept away in at the Harbor Key.
Okay.
If you can. It's an experience, right? Like Dan and Bouchra have this tugboat. They converted it into a bed and breakfast. Yeah, they do Moroccan French cuisine on the boat. You can sleep on the boat. It's moored at the Harbor Key here in town.
And then how
She's an old, beautiful tug. Every year I have to paint it, so I'm just the outside and this side. I've done this side. It was built in California for the war, but then it was sold into the Georgia Strait Towing Company, which was Vancouver. So it spent its whole life between here and Alaska, back and forth. Yeah, we kind of redid all the surfaces. A lot of the layout was already done, and then we just had to refix things.
Right.
And reposition the galley here. We had to put a commercial dishwashing room in, and and we have 7 bedrooms for our bed and breakfast.
There's 7 bedrooms in here.
There's 13 altogether, 6 bathrooms.
Oh, that's a big shower, actually. Like, remarkably large. What in the world inspired you to buy a boat and open an Airbnb?
I guess you can call it middle-age crisis.
I was looking at Tofino and showing one of the kids about surfing and stuff in Tofino, and we were living in Ontario. And it's like, hey, you can surf in Canada too. So I was showing them, and I see this little picture of a tugboat, and we were thought about maybe doing something like this on a sailboat.
Right.
And then we started looking at the math. Okay, well, we can only have 3 rooms or whatever, 4 rooms. So we thought, no, in order to do it and make it work, we need to go bigger. So then we started looking at bigger boats, and I saw that tugboat, and I'm like, it's still fully ocean going, but we don't take guests out. Yeah,
but
we can
do you
take
guys
friends
go
out.
out?
Yeah, we can take friends out, but we can't.
Cool.
Yeah. But it costs like it's about $450 an hour to run.
Yeah, I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
gas is real cheap these days.
yeah, exactly. So you pick and choose.
How booked up do you guys get? Full. Summertime especially. Yeah. Winter kind of a little quieter.
Yeah, we have like 14 to 15 guests here. The one room, actually the other room has a fold-down bunk too. So we have about 15 guests every single night.
Wow. All summer long.
All summer long. Yeah. The restaurant thing came on its own. We never initially intended to have a restaurant.
You were making food for your guests.
So we just thought, if people want to join us for dinner, great.
Specialize in Moroccan because it's close to home for me and I grew up with, right? So it's easy. Everything is tied up here. My spice rack is over there. I got so much stuff.
And we import all of our spices from Morocco. The spices we get sent over, but everything else we buy locally.
Yeah.
After Twin City, we wanted to head to the Wild West Coast to visit a well-known local surfboard designer and maker who had shaped a board for me this past fall.
So you get the foam in like this, in these shapes?
Start of a board right there. You match the curve of the board to the curve of the wave. Wave looks like that, rocker looks like that. Waves look like this, rocker looks like that.
So the boards you make are specifically for
Tofino, but I've traveled a lot, so I make a lot of boards for travel surfers. After you've chosen the right blank, you're going to, and you of course, hopefully you've already designed a surfboard for it. You'd pick the blank, and you'd come in here, and you'd set it up on the CNC machine. I got a glasser and a sander down there that need 10 boards a week to keep them employed.
Right.
And as a minimum, and then I have to run the business. So this thing's going back and forth and roughing things out. I'm running the rest of it. And there's just a few things that I really care about. For hand shaping, there's just a part of the board that's really important. You have to really love something here because there isn't a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't love surfing, fishing, or walking on the beach, probably think you'd want to move somewhere else. Glassing either makes or breaks a board. So I can make the nicest board, I can shape it out, it can be absolutely perfect. It can come in here and get destroyed. One thing about surfing is it's really given the youth in Tofino something to do, and it's created a reason to stay. When I came here, it was like kind of the babies would grow up and they would move away. And now people I think a lot of kids are gonna stay. And I know there are more kids who have stayed because there is something here to stay for, There's always been fishing and there's always been the outdoors life for sure. But surfing becomes more like a passion and a way of life. It's not really a sport, although it's sort of become more of a sport. In the past, it was more about traveling, seeing the world, and just being in the water.
But it builds culture, it builds community, it's a lot more than just being on the water surfing.
That's it, yeah. Definitely, and it resolves issues even. Like if you got to surf with somebody, you're going to see them in the parking lot, whatever, you just tend to be like, okay, well, everybody tends to be pretty easygoing. And that's one thing here is that I find that people are like, man, everybody's so nice here. And it's like, well, that's because we got to live with each other. It does kind of help everybody get along.
Yeah.
It's kind of what ties everything together.
With a positive review from Stefan, we head over to meet owner and pitmaster Ronnie Lee.
It's kind of a funny story the way everything happened. I was in Ontario and I was looking to move to either BC or back to Nova Scotia, where I'm from. And my childhood best friend called me up and he said, what would it take to open a barbecue joint here in Tofino? And I was like, well, what's Tofino? And I Googled it.
Oh, he lived out here?
Yeah. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll be there in a week. And I packed up my knives, packed up my clothes in this Jeep. I drove across Canada and I came out to Tofino and I started working at Wolf in the Fog. The sense of community that you get. We all get together on our days off and we cook a lot of food. So that's kind of where the backyard barbecue came from. And then I went on Craigslist and we bought John and Cash the smoker, and I bought it in Eastern Ohio. I knew every single customer that ever ate my food. You know, I built those relationships. I built all the relationships I had around town with local businesses. Those guys are basically how we started out our catering company.
How long ago was this?
This is our third summer we're coming into.
Third summer.
Yeah. Here we've got our beef ribs. We've got some briskets on the go over here. And then we've got our beans smoking over in the corner. Everything that we have in this space, we found and refurbished. The only thing that's brand new in here are the light bulbs and the artwork. This bar top around the room, my buddy was ripping out Sarah McLaughlin's old deck, and as he was tearing it out, he was bringing it here and refinishing it. And that's the space. All right, so I'm gonna put together some food for you guys. Barbecue's not just about the meats, you gotta have some dope sides. I travel around Vancouver Island thrifting, so all of the spoons, knives, playwear, it all comes from somebody's grandma. Lime sour cream, nacho cheese Dorito crumble, the infamous slaw. So it's a mix of green and red cabbage. The dressing's got a little bit of kick to it. House smoked beans, smoking the smoker alongside of the briskets. So they've got a lot of caramelized onions, which we caramelize in the smoker as well. So it adds a nice depth of flavor. So basically pork side ribs, seasoned with brown sugar, black pepper and salt. Then we just give them a little bit of our rib glaze. It's basically our mango habanero barbecue sauce with a whack of butter in it. So after this, we'll go with a jerk chicken and brisket to finish it off. The grass-fed organic beef here speaks for itself. Like I said, we don't do anything silly with it. We just put salt and pepper on it and let the meat speak for itself. House smoked caramelized onion in there for you. Now my favorite part, I get to hand pick your plates for you. I think you would like something like this. And a nice floral. Beautiful. All right, guys, please enjoy your dining experience. Thanks for coming by. Yeah, great to meet you.
Pull's super easy, don't even need a knife to get into it. Flavors, perfect.
Driving back to the city from Tofino, super accessible right off the highway, Cathedral Grove, where some of the trees are over 800 years old. Oh, this is the big tree. It's a lot of arm lengths around.
I think a lot of people don't know there is life past Nanaimo too, so.
We're at Land and Sea with Tessa, the head brewer. So for the Pod Pack, I mean, you guys are the newest brewery coming on board this project. What drew you to this project as a new startup brewery?
I'd have to say the community feel. The fact that Vancouver Island Brewing Company is such like a staple on Vancouver Island, and all of the other breweries that you've included in this pod pack are community-oriented breweries. I thought it would be a really cool way to collaborate with everyone because community is so important to Jason and Hannah and all of us here at Land and Sea.
There's kind of two ways people can go about when you go, hey, what do you want to make? Because that was a big thing for us, is we didn't want to try and like go, hey, let's do a collaboration. Also, you're making
this. Is what we're
this.
making.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that's not what we wanted to do. Everybody seemed to want to be like, I want to showcase what I do best, what I'm really proud of, what really excites me, and I really like that.
That's such a big draw, like coming to VIB and having this huge process. I'm a process control geek because I have robotics and automation in my background, so I love
This brew house was built for you.
So then when I get to go, this is my 5th brewing system, and I've learned a lot in that time, and I feel like that makes me a better brewer when I can solve problems in different ways on different systems. 4 fermenters on either side. I have my mash slaughter tun. So when you get to collaborate with different people on different systems, you just add more tools into your tool belt. I really like that people here work really hard, but they play really hard too. It's not abnormal for someone to put in a 60-hour work week and then hop on their boat and,
go out.
The valley is wonderful because we're right on the ocean. We have salmon-bearing creeks and rivers. So you get that, but then in the same day you can go up to Mount Washington and go skiing or snowboarding or cross-country skiing. I think that's so great. I think that it really makes me want to do that more when I'm around a community that does that.
They're an extension of the place that they are.
Right.
Yeah, and that to us being Vancouver Island, we have a name that kind of puts us not so much into a city but a region, but also still taking that approach and that mentality of showcasing the region, how you guys showcase your community, and thinking on that scale, but using the same philosophy about how to approach things and connect with people and just really be proud of where you are.
I like that.
So Chris, we've had an awesome week on the road and we're here on our last stop and we're going to meet Glenn Varney from the South Vancouver Island Angler Coalition.
This is the spot where the smolts that we saw earlier that got raised at Nitnat River Hatchery are now placed into pens and going to be released into the ocean. Trying to feed southern resident killer whales, aren't we?
You betcha, yeah. We've been doing this. This is year number 3 of the project, and we're averaging just over 500,000 Chinook smolts each season. And this will be the first year of some returns. We move all the fish down this 600 feet of hose. Sometimes, depending on what the tide is doing, we actually have to lift it up over our heads. And on a transport, it's about 150,000. And it all depends on how big those fish are. The bigger they are, the less you get. Because these fish, they come from the Nitnat River Hatchery. They're ready to smolt out. Is basically when they're transferring from freshwater to saltwater. We get them at that stage. We put them in here for a couple weeks, and that acclimates them to the freshwater lens from the Souk River. So they get used to that freshwater from the Souk, that scent, and that's one of their honing devices as to coming back to the Souk River here.
In any given year, how many fish are you moving through here?
Well, this project, we're doing 500,000.
Are there any techniques for releasing them, like up to survival rates because you're doing things in a specific type of fashion?
Yeah, I believe there is, and I've adopted a program where we do all our releases at nighttime, and when we release at nighttime, the birds, there's no birds around, and the seals are generally up on the docks snoozing, so it gives them a chance to move around in the harbor. The southern resident killer whale population primarily eats Chinook salmon. If there was a school of coho or a school of pink salmon,
They're not going to get too picky.
they're not going to get too picky. They primarily look at the big Chinook because the Chinooks is the biggest of the Pacific salmon species. With this project, I mean, we're only a little drop in the bucket, so to speak, for helping out the orcas, but it's a great project, and I know the Souk fish show up here in late July, early August. So, and that's when we see the southern residents quite a bit in this area because they're hunting. They're on the hunt for big Chinooks. If we can boost it to 1 million fish a year, it's definitely going to help. They'll be hanging around here a lot more than they do now.